On the highest point of Long Island's Nassau County, 348 feet above sea level, a dream took shape. Not just a house, but a declaration, an 80,000 square foot French château, crafted from Indiana limestone and Italian marble, designed to prove that America could rival the ancient aristocracy of Europe. It was a monument to ambition. Built by hands that once knew only the dirt and grit of the continent's harsh frontier, this was Harbour Hill, an architectural marvel born from unimaginable wealth and a burning desire for belonging. But within its grand design and behind its meticulously crafted facade lay the seeds of a story far more intricate than triumph, a narrative of aspiration, betrayal, and the fragile nature of even the most formidable legacies. Before we chronicle the rise and fall of this extraordinary estate, tell us in the comments, where are you joining us from today? To truly comprehend Harbour Hill, we must journey back to its very foundation and the man who first envisioned its impossible grandeur. To truly comprehend Harbour Hill, we must journey back to its very foundation and the man who first envisioned its impossible grandeur. The genesis of this ambition lay not in the drawing rooms of New York high society, but in the harsh crucible of American immigration and the raw, untamed West. John William Mackay, born in Dublin, Ireland in 1831, arrived in the United States at the tender age of 9. His father, seeking a new life, died shortly after their arrival in New York in 1840, leaving John to navigate a bewildering new world alone. He grew up in the squalid tenements of the infamous 5 Points district, a labyrinth of poverty and struggle. By the age of 11, formal education was a luxury he could not afford. He left school to sell newspapers on the unforgiving streets of Manhattan and later to toil in the bustling, grimy shipyards. These early years forged in him a resilience and tenacity that would define his life. In 1851, a 20-year-old John Mackay, fueled by the promise of the gold rush, set sail for California. For 8 grueling years, he mined the unforgiving earth, yet fortune eluded him. He never struck it rich in gold, but his resolve remained unbroken. In 1859, he journeyed eastward to Virginia City, Nevada, a bustling hub of the Comstock lode. Here he began working in the silver mines, earning a modest $4 a day. What John Mackay possessed was not luck, but a brutal, relentless determination. He worked 2 full shifts, one for immediate survival and another, often in secret, in exchange for shares in the precarious mining ventures. He observed, he learned, and he strategically acquired small stakes in claims that others dismissed. This calculated risk bore fruit in 1873. Alongside 3 other Irishmen, John Mackay unearthed the Big Bonanza, a lode of silver ore so vast and rich that it transcended all previous discoveries. From this single mine, an astonishing $100 million in gold and silver was extracted. The 4 men, once struggling miners, became legends, the Bonanza Kings. John Mackay, the boy who had started his life selling newspapers in the muddy streets of Manhattan, now stood as one of the wealthiest men in the world. His personal fortune was beyond measure, a testament to unyielding will and a profound understanding of the earth's hidden treasures. However, wealth, even of this magnitude, proved insufficient to bridge certain social chasms. John Mackay's new money could buy almost anything, but it could not purchase immediate acceptance into the entrenched high society of New York. His wife, Marie Louise Antoinette Hungerford Bryant Mackay, found herself scorned and dismissed by the city's established elite due to her perceived lack of pedigree. In a decisive move that would profoundly influence her children's upbringing and aspirations, Louise relocated to Paris. There, the Mackay fortune bought what lineage could not, a magnificent mansion near the Arc de Triomphe, where she swiftly became a celebrated hostess. For 2 decades, she entertained European royalty, ambassadors and artists, forging a new social standing for the family. Her children, including Clarence, were thus raised in a unique duality, straddling the world of American new money and European old aristocracy. This exposure instilled in them an understanding that true distinction often required more than mere wealth. It demanded a certain grandeur, a visible statement of power and taste. Clarence Hungerford Mackay, born in San Francisco on April 17, 1874, was the youngest son, educated by private tutors across Europe. He never attended university, instead entering his father's burgeoning business empire in New York at the age of 20 in 1894. Though his father, John Mackay, would not pass away until 1902 in London, leaving Clarence, at 28, control of the Postal Telegraph Company and Commercial Cable Company, along with an estimated $500 million, Clarence had already begun to chart his own course, driven by the family's cultivated ambition. In 1896, during a transatlantic voyage, a pivotal encounter unfolded. Clarence met Catherine Alexander Dewar, known as Kitty. She was everything the Mackay family aspired to embody. A young woman of impeccable New York high society, with a refined education and a direct lineage to Lady Kitty Dewar, daughter of the esteemed Lord Stirling. Kitty's beauty was described as a perfect specimen of willful, melancholy beauty. She had served as a bridesmaid in 1895 at the wedding of Consuelo Vanderbilt to the Duke of Marlborough, an event widely regarded as the society marriage of the century. Her presence alone lent an aura of established grace and historical prestige. Their union, on May 17, 1898, was more than a marriage. It was a deliberate confluence of formidable new wealth and venerable old American aristocracy. As a wedding gift, Clarence's father presented the couple with a sprawling 688-acre estate atop Harbor Hill in Roslyn, Long Island. From this vantage point, the view was breathtaking, sweeping across Hempstead Harbor to the shimmering expanse of Long Island Sound. On clear days, the distant skyline of Manhattan was visible, a constant reminder of the urban power they now commanded. Kitty and Clarence, intimately familiar with the architectural splendors of Paris, chose a profound inspiration for their new home, the Château de Maison Lafitte, a 1642 masterpiece by François Mansart. Their vision was not merely to build a grand house, but to erect a French castle on American soil, a bold, unequivocal statement. It would serve as a symbol of their combined position, a direct challenge to the opulent château of Europe, and an architectural embodiment of American ambition itself. This would be a place where the grandeur of the old world met the boundless resources of the new. To bring this formidable vision to life, they enlisted the most celebrated architect in America, Stanford White of the prestigious firm McKim, Mead & White. White, with his distinctive red hair and luxuriant mustache, was the go-to designer for the era's titans, the Astors, the Vanderbilts, J.P. Morgan. Harbor Hill was slated to become his largest private residence, a project characterized by unusually close collaboration with its clients. While White was the master architect, Kitty, barely in her 20s when construction commenced in 1899, proved to be the true client, possessing firm opinions on every detail. She worked directly with White, adapting the classical French facade with subtle Renaissance influences, crafting a residence that was at once distinctly European and unmistakably American. The construction itself was a monumental undertaking, projected to last 3 years. Indiana blue limestone, the same material White had famously used for Madison Square Garden, formed the outer walls, giving the mansion its imposing yet elegant character. Italian marble was imported to line the interiors, reflecting a commitment to the highest standards of luxury. The formal gardens were meticulously designed by landscape architect Guy Lowell, transforming the rolling hills into manicured classical vistas. The estate rapidly grew beyond the main house, incorporating Gothic-style stables designed by Warren and Wetmore, a carriage house complete with a miniature campanile, fully functional farms, multiple guest houses, luxurious Turkish baths, private firing ranges, and even a dedicated casino. Harbor Hill was conceived as a virtually self-sufficient principality, a testament to the unbridled power and aspiration of the Mackay name. The foundations were laid, the stone began to rise, and the stage was set for the remarkable ascension of an empire, etched in stone and ambition. The year 1902 marked a profound pivot for the Mackay family, signifying both the realization of an architectural marvel and the passage of an era. It was in this year that Harbor Hill, the ambitious French château perched atop Long Island's highest point, finally stood complete. Concurrently in London, the indomitable John William Mackay, The patriarch who had forged the family's colossal fortune from the Nevada silver lodes passed away at the age of 71. His son, Clarence Hungerford Mackay, then just 28 years old, inherited not only the vast industrial empire encompassing the Postal Telegraph Company and Commercial Cable Company, but also the immense freshly completed estate. This convergence of completion and loss infused Harbour Hill with a dual significance. It was a monument to John's staggering achievement, and, simultaneously, the domain Clarence was now compelled to define on his own terms. Harbour Hill represented the pinnacle of Gilded Age extravagance and architectural ambition. 80,000 square feet of meticulously crafted luxury unfolded across its multiple stories. The exterior, a stately composition of Indiana blue limestone, resonated with the grandeur of its French château inspiration, yet Stanford White had infused it with an undeniable American scale and robustness. Within, the interiors were a symphony of imported opulence. Vast quantities of Italian marble, painstakingly selected and shipped across the Atlantic, clad the walls and floors of the grand entrance hall, the ballrooms, and reception salons, reflecting light with cool, polished elegance. Beyond marble, rare woods sourced from around the globe were expertly carved into intricate paneling and ceiling coffers, while custom-designed furniture, rich tapestries from European looms, and exquisite objets d'art filled every space, each piece chosen to underscore the family's cultivated taste and seemingly limitless resources. The sprawling 688-acre estate was conceived not merely as a lavish residence, but as a self-sufficient principality. Guy Lowell's formal gardens, a testament to classical landscape design, stretched in meticulously terraced layers down the hillside, featuring sculpted hedges, reflecting pools, and fountains that offered breathtaking vistas of Hempstead Harbour and the distant, sparkling waters of Long Island Sound. But the grounds were far more than ornamental. Gothic-style stables designed by the firm Warren & Wetmore housed a prized collection of thoroughbred horses, while a carriage house complete with a charming miniature campanile spoke of a functional elegance that supported the estate's daily operations. Fully operational farms dotted the landscape, providing fresh produce, dairy, and meat, ensuring the estate's autonomy. Numerous guest houses offered private, luxurious accommodations for visitors, while amenities such as opulent Turkish baths, private firing ranges, and a dedicated casino catered to every possible recreational pursuit. Harbour Hill was a meticulously planned ecosystem of wealth, comfort, and control, requiring a staff of over 100 employees to maintain its flawless operation. From the moment of its grand unveiling, Harbour Hill became an unequivocal icon of the Gilded Age. It was more than a home. It was a potent symbol, a bold architectural statement that openly challenged the ancient established château of Europe. The Mackays became celebrated for their legendary hospitality, their parties a focal point of the era's social calendar. These were not mere gatherings, but meticulously orchestrated spectacles, often spanning several days, drawing hundreds of guests from the highest echelons of society. Musicians from New York's Metropolitan Opera and Philharmonic Orchestra were regularly imported to entertain, their melodies echoing through the marble halls. The mansion's private art collections rivaled those of established European museums, encompassing priceless Renaissance armor, intricate tapestries, and a formidable array of paintings by old masters, many of which would eventually find their way into the permanent collections of institutions like the National Gallery. Each lavish display, each meticulously planned event, served to solidify the Mackay family's position at the apex of American social and economic power, demonstrating a cultivated taste that complemented their inherited wealth. Yet amidst this dazzling display of material splendor and social ambition, Catherine Alexander Dewar Mackay, known intimately as Kitty, possessed a spirit that transcended the confines of her gilded existence. Born into impeccable New York aristocracy, her refined education and classical beauty often belied a fiercely independent intellect and a burgeoning commitment to progressive ideals. In 1905, Kitty made a decision that reverberated through the staid halls of high society and even surprised her own family. Defying the prevailing norms for women of her standing, she campaigned for and successfully won a seat on the Roslyn Educational Board. This made her the first woman to be elected to public office in the area. Her campaign was revolutionary for its time, focusing primarily on the abolition of corporal punishment in local schools. Her dedication to this cause quickly earned her the admiration of the community's children, who, in a rare display of public affection, scrawled, "Mrs. Mackay is our friend," on fences and barn walls throughout Roslyn. Kitty's activism was not a fleeting endeavor. In 1908, she took a more significant step, founding the Equal Franchise Society. This move represented a profound public endorsement of the nascent women's suffrage movement, a cause still widely considered radical and unladylike within elite circles. Kitty leveraged her immense wealth, her undeniable social standing, and her personal charisma to lend unprecedented respectability to the suffragist cause. Her involvement attracted prominent figures and significantly shifted public perception, demonstrating that the fight for women's voting rights was not solely the domain of activists, but could also be embraced by the most fashionable and influential women in America. Her commitment was not merely performative, it was a deep-seated conviction, reflecting a woman who sought to use her platform for substantive social change, even if it meant challenging the very society that had elevated her. However, beneath the polished marble and behind the imposing stone walls of Harbor Hill, an insidious tension began to fracture the meticulously constructed facade of perfection. Despite the outward projection of power, unity, and an enviable lifestyle, the internal dynamics of the Mackay marriage became increasingly strained. The pressures of their contrasting temperaments, Clarence's traditionalism and devotion versus Kitty's progressive zeal and independent spirit, began to exert their toll. In 1910, the burgeoning societal disquiet surrounding Kitty's public political activism was dramatically overshadowed by a far more intimate and devastating scandal. Catherine Mackay, the mistress of Harbor Hill and a leading socialite, abandoned Clarence and their 3 young children, Catherine Dewar Jr., Ellen and John William Mackay III. She fled to Paris with Dr. Joseph Augustus Blake, a physician who had been entrusted with Clarence's health during a recent battle with throat cancer. The public revelation of this betrayal sent shockwaves through the upper echelons of New York society, dismantling the carefully cultivated image of the Mackays and exposing a profound fissure within their personal lives. The scandalous liaison, however, proved as fleeting as it was shocking. Dr. Blake, in an act that compounded Kitty's public humiliation, soon abandoned her in Paris for a younger nurse, leaving Catherine adrift and isolated in a foreign city. The divorce proceedings between Catherine and Clarence, initiated by Clarence, culminated in Paris in 1914. The legal and emotional toll was immense. Kitty lost custody of all 3 of her children, a devastating blow for any mother. Furthermore, in a symbolic act of severance, she formally renounced her American citizenship, effectively severing ties with her past life and nation. For Clarence, the repercussions were equally severe. A devout Irish Catholic, his faith imposed an unyielding prohibition against remarriage, as long as Kitty, his first wife, remained alive. This religious decree left him in a state of perpetual marital celibacy, publicly bound to a woman who had not only abandoned him, but had also tarnished his family's name. The flight of Kitty Mackay to Paris, followed by her subsequent abandonment by Blake and the acrimonious public divorce, constituted the first devastating crack in the impeccably engineered facade of the Mackay family. Harbor Hill, once a gleaming symbol of unblemished ambition and success, now contained the indelible stain of scandal, personal tragedy, and profound loss. The perfect image the Mackays had strived so assiduously to project had been irrevocably shattered, revealing the acute human cost lurking beneath the polished grandeur of their Gilded Age empire. An essential, vibrant part of Harbor Hill's soul had departed, leaving an emptiness that no amount of inherited wealth or societal standing could truly fill. The mansion, designed to defy Europe, now bore witness to a very European-style heartbreak, a testament to the fact that even the most magnificent structures could not entirely shield their inhabitants from the raw, unpredictable forces of human emotion and betrayal. After Catherine Mackay's abrupt departure in 1910, a palpable, though invisible void settled over Harbor Hill. The vibrant spirit that Kitty had brought, her progressive intellect and commanding social presence, was irrevocably gone. Clarence Hungerford Mackay, a man whose life had been meticulously curated and controlled, now found himself at the helm of a vast estate that felt strangely hollowed out, a testament to a union that had fractured in the most public and painful manner. The echoes of lavish parties and the murmur of polite conversation continued, yet a fundamental warmth had departed, leaving Clarence to navigate the immense spaces of his château alone, save for his children and a devoted staff. His Catholic faith, which forbade him from remarrying while Kitty lived, bound him to a life of solitary domesticity within the walls designed for an ambitious power couple. He retreated further into his business interests, though the social obligations of his position demanded that Harbour Hill continue to function as a grand stage. It was within this imposing, yet subtly melancholic, atmosphere that Clarence's daughter, Ellen Mackay, matured. Born in 1903, Ellen grew up amidst immense privilege, surrounded by European art, palatial rooms, and an army of servants, yet keenly aware of the unspoken fracture that permeated her family's life. Unlike her mother, whose progressive activism was a public display, Ellen sought her own voice through a more personal, introspective means. Writing. She began contributing articles to The New Yorker, a burgeoning literary magazine known for its sharp wit and sophisticated observations of urban life. Her essays were often satirical, exploring the foibles of society, the shifting roles of women, and the intricacies of social freedom, themes that perhaps reflected her own internal struggle against the restrictive expectations of her class. Through her prose, Ellen carved out an intellectual identity distinct from the purely social role prescribed for a Mackay heiress, demonstrating a keen intelligence and an independent spirit that mirrored, in some ways, her mother's earlier defiance. Her independent spirit led her down a path that would once again challenge Clarence's deeply held convictions and societal expectations. In the early 1920s, Ellen fell passionately in love with Irving Berlin. Berlin, a Russian Jewish immigrant born Israel Balin, was a brilliant and prolific composer, 15 years Ellen's senior, whose rags-to-riches story mirrored John Mackay's own. He had arrived in America with nothing, working his way from Bowery cafes to Broadway and Tin Pan Alley, where he penned some of the nation's most beloved songs. For Ellen to choose a partner of such vastly different origins, a self-made Jewish man from humble immigrant roots rather than an approved match from old-line Protestant society, was an affront to Clarence's rigid social conventions. Despite her father's strenuous disapproval and the widespread societal prejudice against interfaith and interclass marriages, Ellen remained resolute. Their romance culminated in their wedding in January 1926. In a stark demonstration of his displeasure and adherence to social rigidity, Clarence not only refused to attend the ceremony, but formally disinherited Ellen, severing financial ties with his beloved daughter for her defiance. The grand halls of Harbour Hill, which had witnessed so much splendor, remained silent on the day of Ellen's marriage, a chilling testament to the unyielding social barriers that wealth could not always overcome. Despite these profound personal and familial tensions, Harbour Hill retained its status as an undisputed social epicenter. Clarence, perhaps driven by a desire to uphold appearances or to distract from his personal losses, continued to host events that cemented the estate's legendary reputation. These were the Roaring Twenties, a decade of unprecedented prosperity and exuberant celebration, and Harbour Hill served as one of its most glittering stages. In 1924, the estate reached a pinnacle of international social prominence when it hosted a lavish party for Edward, the Prince of Wales, the future and brief King Edward VIII. 1,200 guests, a dazzling constellation of America's elite and European royalty, converged upon the mansion. The entire property was transformed into a fantastical spectacle. The trees lining the grand, mile-long driveway were meticulously draped with small twinkling blue lights, creating an ethereal pathway to the château. The roof of the main house itself became a canvas for light, covered with red, white, and blue lamps, arranged to form a colossal, luminous American flag, a beacon so bright, some whispered, that it could be seen from as far away as Connecticut. Fountains jetted streams of perfumed water into the night air, their delicate fragrances mingling with the sounds of laughter and music. Inside, floral arrangements floated magically, seemingly suspended in the center of monumental 300-pound blocks of ice, masterpieces of fleeting beauty. It was during this era of unprecedented opulence that F. Scott Fitzgerald and his wife Zelda resided briefly on Long Island, leaving for France in 1924. They had reportedly attended a party at Harbour Hill in 1923, and the grand spectacles of the Mackay estate did not escape Fitzgerald's keen observer's eye. Some literary scholars suggest that the infamous 1924 party for the Prince of Wales, with its dazzling illuminated flag on the roof, may have served as a direct inspiration for Fitzgerald, who briefly considered titling his nascent novel Under the Red, White and Blue, before ultimately settling on The Great Gatsby. In Fitzgerald's iconic description, Gatsby's mansion was a factual imitation of some Hôtel de Ville in Normandy, a precise architectural parallel to Harbour Hill's French château design. The connection highlights how deeply embedded the Mackay estate was in the cultural zeitgeist of the Jazz Age, a symbol of its extravagant dreams and gilded excesses. The mansion's final brilliant flourish came on June 13, 1927. Following his triumphant solo transatlantic flight, Charles Lindbergh, accompanied by his mother and the mayor of New York City, was celebrated at Harbour Hill with a grand banquet and ball. This event, held on the evening of his ticker tape parade down Fifth Avenue, solidified Harbour Hill's place in American history, marking it as a venue fit for national heroes and a symbol of collective pride. The estate glowed once more, bathed in the adulation of a nation and the last rays of an era of seemingly boundless prosperity. However, beneath the celebratory facade, the seeds of ruin were already being sown. In 1928, Clarence Mackay made a decision that, at the time, seemed both shrewd and prudent. He elected to sell the entirety of his venerable postal telegraph company to the rapidly expanding International Telephone and Telegraph Corporation, ITT. The sale price was an astronomical $300 million, not in cash, but entirely in ITT stock. In the booming, confident economy of the late 1920s, exchanging an established, tangible company for shares in a dynamic, growing corporation was widely considered a smart, strategic move, a way to further consolidate and multiply wealth in a seemingly perpetual bull market. It was a fortune held entirely on paper, reliant on the sustained health of the stock market. The illusion of invincibility, however, proved tragically short-lived. In October 1929, the seemingly unstoppable American stock market faltered, then plunged into a catastrophic freefall. The great crash of 1929 arrived with brutal suddenness, pulverizing fortunes overnight. In a matter of days, Clarence Mackay's immense wealth evaporated. The shares of ITT, which had been valued at $300 million only months prior, became almost worthless. At 55 years old, the man who had inherited a $500 million fortune and transformed it into the architectural masterpiece of Harbour Hill found himself financially devastated, effectively poor. The golden era had abruptly ended, and the majestic château, once a symbol of unbridled ambition, now stood as a silent witness to the inescapable beginning of its own ruin and that of its diminished proprietor. The promise of endless prosperity had dissolved, leaving behind a profound and bitter emptiness that no amount of past grandeur could fill. The catastrophic stock market crash of 1929 left Clarence Hungerford Mackay financially devastated. His immense fortune, primarily held in plummeting shares of International Telephone and Telegraph Corporation, evaporated with brutal speed, marking an abrupt end to the era of Gilded Age prosperity at Harbour Hill. In 1930, Catherine Alexander Dewar Mackay, Clarence's first wife, passed away from cancer in Paris at the age of 52. Her death, 2 decades after her scandalous departure, finally liberated Clarence from the religious prohibition against remarriage imposed by his Catholic faith. In the midst of his financial ruin, he was now free to seek companionship and, perhaps, a measure of solace. On July 18, 1931, Clarence married Anna Case, a renowned soprano from the Metropolitan Opera, at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Roslyn. For their wedding, he presented Anna with an exquisite emerald and diamond necklace designed by Cartier. This dazzling gift, one of the last vestiges of his former extravagance, served as a poignant final act of lavish affection amidst his declining fortunes. However, the illusion of maintaining his former life rapidly dissolved. By 1932, the dire reality of bankruptcy forced Clarence to make an agonizing decision. Harbor Hill, the magnificent chateau that had been the apex of American ambition, could no longer be sustained. With profound reluctance, Clarence ordered its closure. The vast staff, once numbering 126 individuals dedicated to every aspect of the estate, was dismissed. The once bustling halls and meticulously manicured grounds fell into an unsettling silence, a stark contrast to the vibrant activity of previous decades. Clarence and Anna vacated the main house, relocating to a much smaller, more modest farmhouse located elsewhere on the sprawling property. It was a public and painful acknowledgement of his financial collapse. The dismantling of his personal empire continued with painful necessity. To address his mounting debts, Clarence was compelled to sell off his invaluable collections, the very art and artifacts that had once rivaled European museums and defined his cultivated taste. The medieval armaments, the priceless paintings, and the intricate tapestries were methodically put on the market. These sales, conducted during the depths of the Great Depression, inevitably occurred at great loss, as reported by the New York Times. However, what was a personal tragedy for Clarence became a significant cultural gain for the nation. Prominent art patrons and dealers such as Joseph Duveen, Samuel Kress, and Andrew Mellon acquired many of these masterpieces. Today, pieces from Clarence Mackay's collections are proudly displayed in institutions like the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and the National Gallery in London, enduring testaments to his discerning eye, now accessible to the public long after his private world had crumbled. Clarence Hungerford Mackay passed away from cancer on November 12, 1938, at the age of 64. His life, which had started with an inherited fortune of $500 million and culminated in the construction of an architectural marvel, ended amidst financial ruin and a quiet sense of loss. His funeral was held at the majestic St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, a final somber ceremony where the New York Philharmonic Orchestra performed a tribute. Just 4 days before his death, he had departed Harbor Hill for the very last time. He was interred in the Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn within the same mausoleum that housed his father, John, and his elder brother, who had died in a riding accident in 1895. The ambitious cycle of the Mackay dynasty had come to its solemn conclusion. Following Clarence's death, his widow, Anna Case Mackay, attempted to maintain the family's city residence at 3 East 75th Street in Manhattan. However, this effort proved unsustainable, and the bank foreclosed on the property in 1940. The remaining family collections, once so vast and varied, were subsequently sold off, scattering the last tangible remnants of the Mackay legacy. Harbor Hill itself entered a period of profound neglect and disrepair. During World War II, 50 acres of the sprawling estate were leased to the U.S. Army, transforming a portion of its grand grounds into the Roslyn Air Force Station. The perimeter fences, once meticulously maintained boundaries of a private empire, were torn down and melted as scrap for the war effort. Left vulnerable and unprotected, the mansion became a target for extensive vandalism. Windows were shattered, doors were ripped from their hinges, and the elements began their relentless assault. Rain penetrated the very salons that had once hosted princes and presidents, seeping into the Italian marble and custom woodwork, accelerating its decay. The former symbol of American ambition slowly transformed into a derelict shell, a haunting monument to a vanished era. By 1947, the decision was reached. Harbor Hill, a structure that had taken 3 years of meticulous labor and immeasurable wealth to construct, was deemed beyond repair and slated for demolition. Before the explosives were set, a final, practical salvage operation took place. 100 tons of cast iron, components of the building's internal structure and decorative elements, were carefully removed for sale as scrap metal. Then the charges were placed. In mere seconds, the magnificent 80,000 square foot chateau, a monumental edifice of Indiana limestone, Italian marble, and profound American memory, vanished in a controlled explosion, reduced to a colossal pile of rubble. The castle built to rival Europe had returned to dust on its own soil. The destruction, however, was not absolute. In 1957, a unique artistic fragment of Harbour Hill found a new existence. The estate's central fountain, a grand 1910 work by the French sculptor Henri-Léon Graeber, featuring 4 dynamic equestrian statues, was meticulously disassembled and transported across the country. It was reassembled in Kansas City, Missouri, where it remains on public display near the Country Club Plaza, a curious, displaced echo of Long Island grandeur in the heartland of America. In 1955, Clarence's youngest son, John William Mackay III, then 50 years old, made the ultimate disposition of the remaining property. The 648 acres of what was once Harbour Hill were sold to a Manhattan developer. The sprawling estate was subsequently subdivided, its rolling hills and former formal gardens systematically cleared to make way for the construction of 400 new residential homes. Today, suburban streets, with names like Loughbury Drive and Ash Drive in the village of East Hills, cut through the very landscape where Stanford White had designed classical gardens and where princely parties once unfolded. There is no plaque, no official memorial to mark the precise spot where the main mansion once stood. Yet, a few fragments of the once vast estate endure, serving as silent witnesses to its past glory. The Milk House and the Water Tower, once utilitarian structures, still stand. Most significantly, the Gate Lodge, a scaled-down miniature version of the main mansion, crafted from the same distinctive Indiana blue limestone, remains at the corner of Harbour Hill Road and Roslyn Road. For decades, it suffered from neglect and deterioration. However, beginning in 2020, the Roslyn Landmark Society, in collaboration with the village of East Hills, commenced dedicated restoration efforts, preserving this last physical testament to the Mackay era. The story of Harbour Hill is more than a chronicle of a family's meteoric rise and precipitous fall. It is a profound American narrative, a tale of immense wealth striving to purchase unearned respectability, of stone and marble proving unable to heal the wounds of abandonment, and of inherited fortunes offering no guarantee of lasting wisdom or happiness. It stands as a testament to the fact that even the grandest castles, built with the most audacious ambition, are vulnerable to the relentless march of time and the unpredictable tides of change. John William Mackay, the impoverished Irish immigrant, forged a staggering fortune with his own hands, extracting silver from the earth. His son, Clarence, then transformed that fortune into a palatial estate, a tangible symbol of dynastic aspiration. In one generation, silver became stone. In another, that stone became dust. Today, ordinary families live their lives where Charles Lindbergh was once celebrated, where princes danced beneath luminous flags, and where F. Scott Fitzgerald perhaps first glimpsed the ghostly outline of his enigmatic Great Gatsby. Children play in suburban backyards where galleries once housed priceless collections of medieval armor. The iconic view from the hilltop remains, Hempstead Harbor, the expanse of Long Island Sound, and on clear days the distant shimmering skyline of Manhattan, a silent, unchanging witness to an empire that vanished. Many now contend that Harbour Hill should never have been destroyed, lamenting its loss as an irreparable architectural tragedy. But perhaps its ultimate destruction is an integral part of the very story it tells. A somber meditation on impermanence, on human hubris, on the crushing human cost of ambition, and on how even dreams built in unyielding stone eventually return to the earth, leaving behind only echoes, fading photographs, and the enduring shadow of Gatsby. The colossal pile of rubble that once defined Harbour Hill, the aspirational French château on Long Island, has long since been cleared. Its grand halls, which once welcomed princes and echoed with the laughter of 1,000 guests, now exist only in faded photographs and fragmented memories. 80,000 square feet of Indiana limestone, Italian marble, and immense American ambition vanished in seconds, dynamited into oblivion, leaving only the highest point of Nassau County and a landscape irrevocably altered. A magnificent fountain, a work of art displaced, now graces a public square in a distant city, a curious, almost forgotten echo of a grandeur that was too vast to survive its own time. Where formal gardens once stretched, suburban streets now meander, and ordinary homes stand silent testament to the impermanence of even the most formidable dreams. Harbour Hill, in its dramatic rise and fall, offers more than just the chronicle of a family's fortune. It stands as a powerful, architectural allegory for an America perpetually striving to purchase what cannot be bought. True belonging, unassailable respectability, and lasting happiness. It reveals how even the most audacious monuments to wealth and status can be undone by the fickle hand of fate, the erosion of personal betrayals, and the seismic shifts of economic collapse. The story of Clarence Mackay, who inherited a king's ransom and built a palace to rival Europe, only to see it crumble, whispers a truth about the fragility of power and the elusive nature of contentment. It is a stark reminder that stone and marble, however grand, cannot mend a fractured family or secure a legacy against the currents of time. What do you believe was the true flaw in the foundation of Harbour Hill? The ambition, the betrayals, or the illusion of invincibility? Share your reflections in the comments below. If the echoes of Gilded Age ambition and the stories of vanished empires intrigue you, consider exploring another tale from the old money chronicles by watching our feature on the Astor Dynasty's lost fortunes. And to ensure you don't miss future explorations into the hidden histories of America's grandest estates and their legacies, remember to like this video and subscribe to Old Money Chronicles.